So a woman doesn't lose respect for a man because he's imperfect. What happens is she starts to lose respect for him because of what he tolerates, right? You can be successful, you can be kind, loyal, even deeply in love, but the moment she realizes that she can get away with certain things without consequence, that's when things start to change. In this video, we're going to talk about the specific things men tolerate that cause women to lose respect for them, and some of these things will be uncomfortable to hear. But if you understand them, you can completely change the dynamic of your relationships. First, I'll explain why tolerance plays such a powerful role in attraction and respect. And then, we'll go through several behaviors men often tolerate in relationships that quietly destroy a woman's respect for them. And finally, we'll talk about how high-value men handle these situations differently so that respect stays intact. If you ever felt like she treated you differently, was pulling away or losing interest for reasons you couldn't understand, then this video is going to connect a lot of dots. Jessica OS here, welcome to the channel. Why tolerance determines respect. To understand why tolerance determines respect, you have to understand how people evaluate power and value in relationships. Respect is built on observed behavior. People watch what you allow, what you ignore, and what you enforce. These observations form the foundation of how they treat you moving forward. And that's why tolerance becomes extremely important. Every relationship contains moments where someone pushes a boundary, intentionally or unintentionally. It might be small at first, a dismissive comment, a canceled plan, a sarcastic remark in front of others, and these moments may seem insignificant, but they function like small tests of the relationship structure. You see, when a guy tolerates behavior that violates his standards, he's communicating that the behavior is acceptable, not verbally, but behaviorally. Human beings learn far more from what you permit than from what you say. A woman might hear a man say, "Hey, I don't like it when you talk to me like that." But if he continues to tolerate her behavior, the message that actually lands is completely different. What the message becomes is, you can do this and nothing will change. Respect begins to erode because the boundaries that define the relationship no longer have any weight behind them. Now, another layer to this is psychological. Attraction and respect are strongly tied to how people think your strength of character is. When someone consistently protects their standards, they demonstrate self-respect. Self-respect naturally commands respect from others. But when someone repeatedly tolerates behavior that undermines them, the opposite signal is sent. It suggests insecurity, fear of loss, or lack of options. And this is why tolerance plays such a critical role. Standards only matter if they're enforced. If they're not enforced, they're simply preferences or advice, as I like to call it. And well, preferences or advice won't command respect. You see, high-value men understand this difference clearly. When something violates their core standards, they address it calmly and directly. If the behavior continues, they reduce their investment or remove themselves from the situation. Their actions communicate clearly that their time, attention, and presence are valuable, tolerating lack of effort. At first, it looks like simple enthusiasm from one partner and a more relaxed approach from the other. But over time, if the imbalance continues, the relationship will begin to tilt in a way that damages attraction and respect. Healthy relationships are built on reciprocity. That doesn't mean both partners must contribute in identical ways, but there should be a general rhythm of mutual investment. Both people have to show initiative. Both should demonstrate interest. Both should contribute energy to keeping the relationship alive. When one person consistently carries the entire emotional and logistical weight of the relationship, something begins to change beneath the surface. Many men find themselves in this position without realizing how they got there. They start by doing thoughtful things, right? They're in love after all. They're initiating conversations, they're planning the dates, they're checking in frequently, making time and all that fun stuff. And these actions by themselves aren't necessarily a problem. In fact, they can be signs of a man who's attentive, a man who's engaged. The issue emerges when those efforts are not reciprocated, right? And the man continues doubling down on his investment. When effort flows overwhelmingly in one direction, it begins to change the perceived value of that effort. Attention that once felt meaningful begins to feel predictable. And predictability removes that sense of excitement. It removes emotional tension that often fuels attraction. Plus, from the woman's perspective, she may start to feel that the man's attention is guaranteed, regardless of how much she contributes. The relationship begins to feel less like a mutual exchange and more like a service being provided. And this doesn't necessarily mean that she intends to take advantage of the situation. In many cases, she's simply adapting to the dynamic that is formed. Of course, human behavior often adjusts to the structure of the relationship. And over time, this creates an imbalance, and it begins to affect how the man is seen. And even if he's successful, intelligent, well-intentioned, that imbalance can quietly undermine his value. Respect is strongly connected to the idea that a person has options, priorities, and a life that exists independently of the relationship. High-value men are generous with their attention, but they're also observant. When they notice that effort is not being reciprocated, you know what they do immediately? They do not increase their investment. Instead, they pause and allow space for the other person to step forward. If she doesn't step forward, he recognizes the imbalance early and adjusts. He may reduce his investment, shift his focus back to his own priorities, or reconsider whether this is even a relationship that he wants in the first place. And this is not him being bitter or full of pride. It comes from clarity. Effort has value when it flows in both directions. When it doesn't, continuing to invest endlessly will slowly undermine both respect and attraction. It's as simple as that. Tolerating constant boundary violations. Boundaries are often misunderstood, especially in modern dating conversations. Many men talk about having boundaries, but very few of them actually enforce them. And you see, the difference between the two determines whether your boundaries actually carry any weight. If you're a patron of my channel, I'm sure that you would have learned by now that a boundary is not simply something you dislike or a preference that you casually mention in conversation. A true boundary is a line that defines what behavior you'll accept and what you won't. Most importantly, it includes the willingness to respond when that line is crossed. When boundaries exist only in words and not in action, of course it loses power. What happens is a lot of guys unintentionally create the situation. They communicate discomfort when something happens that they don't like, right? But then they continue to allow that behavior to fester without meaningful consequences. And guess what? Over time, they act surprised when the other person learns that, well, your boundaries are flexible, negotiable, or simply symbolic. See, I have a video on this channel that talks about boundaries in depth. It dives deeper into 5 boundaries every man must have so he doesn't get walked over by women. I'll leave a link to this video if you want to check it out. Essentially, what I'm saying is high-value men understand that boundaries don't require anger or confrontation to be effective. It's simple. When a boundary is crossed, address it calmly and directly, and then explain what your expectations are, and give the other person an opportunity to adjust. Now, if the behavior continues, modify your level of investment. This might mean declining to reschedule last-minute cancellations, refusing to participate in disrespectful conversations, or stepping back from a dynamic that repeatedly undermines your standards. The key difference lies in follow-through. Because words alone don't enforce boundaries, actions do. Tolerating disrespectful communication. So, disrespectful communication can show up as sarcasm, dismissiveness, mocking, constant criticism, or speaking to a man as if his opinions and feelings are insignificant. Sometimes it appears as eye-rolling, interruptions, or jokes that quietly undermine him in front of other people. And none of these behaviors may look catastrophic on their own, but they reveal a deeper dynamic that's forming between both of you. See, communication is an emotional language of a relationship, and the way two people speak to each other establishes the tone of the entire connection. When communication is respectful, guess what? Even disagreements can feel constructive. But when disrespect begins to be tolerated, the tone of the relationship slowly shifts from partnership to imbalance. Many guys tolerate this because, well, basically they believe that they're just being patient or emotionally mature. They don't want to appear controlling. They don't want to start an unnecessary conflict. Some even tell themselves that ignoring it will make them appear more confident, unbothered. But the reality is very different. As I already said, when disrespectful communication is tolerated, it basically tells the other person that there are no meaningful consequences for crossing certain lines. And the moment that realization happens, the dynamic between you two begins to change. Respect is strongly connected to perceived strength of character, as I already told you. When a person consistently allows themselves to be spoken to in ways that undermine their dignity, etc., it will create that impression that they basically don't value themselves highly enough. And if that's the case, then you have people who will just simply mirror that attitude. High-value men don't explode emotionally or escalate the situation unnecessarily. Instead, they address the issue calmly, directly. It's very important. Something like saying a simple statement like, "Hey, I don't appreciate being spoken to like that," can immediately reset the tone of the interaction. And you see, the power of this response isn't necessarily about the words you spoke, but the clarity behind them. It's saying, "Hey, I have boundaries and I expect them to be respected." When this standard is expressed early and consistently, the relationship will naturally adjust, tolerating emotional games. So these games typically revolve around control of attention and uncertainty. They involve behaviors that keep one person slightly off balance while the other maintains the upper hand in the interaction. So it may look like sudden disappearances, followed by intense affection, repeated cancellations, followed by dramatic apologies, or alternating between hot and cold behavior without clear explanation. A lot of guys think that this is normal in dating. They actually think that unpredictability is part of attraction. They believe they simply need to be more patient, more understanding, more persistent in order to win a woman's interest. But the longer this pattern continues, the more damaging it becomes. And when you tolerate emotional games, you're reinforcing this behavior. Let's call a spade a spade. Every time you chase after mixed signals, respond to inconsistency with more effort, or try harder to regain her attention, you reward the very behavior that's destabilizing everything. And from a psychological standpoint, that shifts the balance of power. So the woman who's creating this emotional unpredictability becomes the one controlling the rhythm of the relationship. And over time, you lose respect. High-value men notice this. They understand that inconsistency should not be rewarded with increased investment. And whenever emotional games appear, what they do is they take a step back. They don't chase. This response sends a powerful message without confrontation. It communicates that, hey, my attention is valuable and it must be earned through consistency and mutual respect. In actual fact, it ends the emotional games altogether. When a woman realizes that inconsistency no longer produces extra attention from you, the incentive to keep doing that will disappear. It's important to note that not every instance of inconsistency is an intentional game. I get it. Like, people have busy lives. Emotional challenges are happening, competing responsibilities. But you see, it's a pattern that I want you to observe. If it's an occasional scheduling conflict or, she's just not in the mood today, whatever, those fluctuations are normal. Persistent unpredictability designed to keep you chasing is something completely different. And it's important that you can tell between the two. Hey, if you're getting value from this video so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I often talk about the real dynamics that exist in attraction. If you want more, search through my channel. I'm sure I've got so many more videos that would be completely helpful. Jessica OS is my name. Thanks for watching and listening. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.